Today, April 21st, is Holocaust Remembrance Day, which is observed as a day of commemoration for approximately 6 million Jews and millions of others who perished in the Holocaust. Born in Southeast Poland in 1934, Lola Rein was 8 years old when her parents died. Lola's grandmother arranged for her to be concealed by a Ukrainian family, and she spent 7 months in hiding. During that time, her only possession was a beautiful dress her mother had embroidered for her. With author Lois Metzger, she tells her powerful story in the book, The Hidden Girl. I will reserve the rest of the time this evening for Lola and Lois to share their stories. Please join me in welcoming them.
Hello and welcome. As Carrie mentioned, it's Holocaust Remembrance Day, and there are ceremonies all over the world commemorating this day, including a march of 7,000 people to Auschwitz. I want to say a special thank you to Carrie Silverman and Mark Bartlett of the New York Society Library, and Ed Zeiss, who brought me to Carrie's attention, and also say hello to Roy Wandelmeyer, my editor of Scholastic, without whom. And a few friends showed up, an old friend from college, Judy Livingston, and Richard Peck, wonderful children's writer, is here. And say hello to my family, my brother Steve Metzger, my sister-in-law Nancy Novick, my niece Julia Metzger, and my husband Tony Hiss, and my son Jacob Hiss. Thank you all for coming. Yes, they deserve it. In Europe in World War II, there were somewhere between 10,000 and 500,000 Jewish children that went into hiding. Now that's a pretty big range for an estimate, 10,000 to 500,000. And the reason is that no one really knows the exact numbers. Records were not kept of such things, and by its very nature, the whole thing was deeply secret. So these between 10,000 and 500,000 Jewish children were helped by non-Jews who risked their own lives to save these children. And some of the hidden children were hidden in what was called in plain sight. They were showed up on a farm as somebody's cousin. They were placed in an orphanage or a convent, and there they waited out the war. Others were truly hidden, maybe behind a false wall or an empty office, which was where Anne Frank hid with her family, in an empty factory. And there they spent days, weeks, months, or even years. And Lola was one of these truly hidden children. And in a way, this event seems very straightforward. Lola was a hidden girl, 8 years old, in World War II Poland. Then she came to America. She had these experiences, and now she'll speak. But it's actually not so simple and not so straightforward. Her journey to speaking took nearly 50 years. For 50 years, she was silent. She got married to Walter, who was here, and she did not speak about her experiences. She had 3 wonderful children, and she did not tell them about her experiences. She made many close friends, and she did not tell them about her experiences. So what I wanted to do was read an excerpt from the book about how Lola went from silence to speaking. This is Lola's own words. On Memorial Day weekend in 1991, I attended the first international gathering of children hidden during World War II at the Marriott Marquis Hotel in Times Square in New York City. There are 1,600 people there listening to panels and lectures and attending workshops where they can share their experiences of hiding, experiences that were so solitary and distancing. I meet Jane Marks, a reporter from New York Magazine. She wants to interview me for a book she's writing on hidden children. We sit down with each other. We talk on the phone. She asks me questions. I let the story out. I allow the words to come, the feelings too. Jane Marks opens the floodgates, so to speak, in more ways than one. I cry every time I speak with her. Her book is published in 1993. I'm no longer silent, at least in print. In 2001, which is 7 years later, I get a letter from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. They're looking for artifacts, items that somehow survived the war, to display in a large exhibit. I decide to donate my dress, and this is the dress that Lola wore when she was in hiding. There's a picture of it on the back of the book, and it's a dress her mother made for her. Amazingly, the dress has suffered no damage to speak of. The white cloth has turned a bit yellow, and there are some spots, but that's all. It's as beautiful as ever. My daughter, Deborah, doesn't want me to part with the dress. I want it for myself, she says. But Deb, I say, it's just hanging in my closet. If I give it to you, it'll just be hanging in your closet. Maybe it's time that someone else sees it. I guess you're right, Mom, she says. By now, Walter and I are living in New City, north of New York City in suburban Rockland County, New York. I fill out papers for the Holocaust Museum. A woman curator arranges to meet me in Manhattan, only an hour or so away. I show her the dress, wondering what she'll think of it. I can't believe how thrilled she is. The dress goes on display for a year, and not just in Washington, D.C. We traveled to many cities together, that dress and I. In one city, at a reception for the exhibit, someone asks me, "What made you decide to give up the dress?" I don't want to answer. I'm with Sarah Bloomfield, the director of the Holocaust Museum. She hands me a microphone and says, "Go ahead and talk." It sort of falls into my lap at that moment, the whole notion that I will speak in public. Well, I simply have to, with all those people staring at me and that microphone in my hand. In the next city, Sarah just hands me the microphone and says again, "Go ahead and talk." My silence, it seems, has been fully broken. And I wanted to mention the website that is also at the Holocaust Museum. The web address is in the back of the book. There's a special section on Lola called Silent Witness, the story of Lola Rein and her dress. And it displays the dress, it shows how they restored the dress, and there's interviews with Lola. It's really a wonderful website. And as Lola just informed me, it won a contest as the second best website out there, second only to the Baltimore Aquarium. So Lola then began speaking at schools and synagogues, and one night she spoke at a temple in Mahwah, New Jersey, and Roy Wandelmeyer, an editor at Scholastic, was in the audience. Roy didn't know Lola, Lola didn't know him, and he got the idea for a book. So he called me up to work with Lola, as he said, because of my, quote, background. Well, I grew up in Queens, which couldn't have been more ordinary, but my mother had to leave Vienna just before the war for Scotland on the kinder transport, and my uncle and grandparents ran from the Nazis for 6 years, so the war was definitely in the air, if not right outside the window. And it influenced my own writing. I wrote a novel about my family's experiences, some of the wartime experiences for a novel called Missing Girls, and also for Scholastic, a biography of Anne Frank. So the idea was for the three of us to have lunch, Lola, Roy, and I, and then decide later, privately, whether we wanted to work together. But as soon as I met Lola, I knew this was something I wanted to be part of. And during the lunch, we just started talking about the book. Not if, but when we would work together. And I was very lucky. I got Lola at the right time. She told her story beautifully. She was no longer silent. She was full of feeling and detail. And she really opened up Poland for me because I felt I knew a little about Austria, where my family came from. But Poland was a whole new world, and that was fascinating. And I completely enjoyed working with her. And the way we worked together was I would interview her, take notes, my Lola notebooks, first few times face to face, then over the phone, and I would write out the notes, read it back, she'd correct me. I'd read it back, she'd correct me. We'd do this over and over until we got it exactly right. And just on a personal note, for me, writing a book like this, there's a certain disconnect because you hear these terrible, terrible things, and Lola went through some truly horrific experiences. But as I'm hearing it, I'm thinking, okay, that's good. I can use that. Where shall I put that? And sometimes what happened to her hit me later, much later. Long after Lola told it to me, I'd say, oh, that really happened. And one time I had to call her to confirm the exact date that her mother died. Her mother was shot by German police. And the Holocaust Museum has the date in February, but it happened in Purim, correct this discrepancy. Now, I've already edited several books, and usually it's the easiest thing in the world. If something needs correcting in a short story, you call the writer, you say what needs to be done, you make the fix. Just recently, I had to edit a short story about werewolves, and the werewolf young were referred to as cubs, but as it turns out, wolf young are pups, so I had to make that call and do that correction. So it's usually very simple, but this call to Lola was absolute torture for me. And I thought, I have to do this, I have to check this date, but I couldn't do it. I thought, what am I going to do? I have to call her. And I put it off and put it off. Finally, I called her, and Lola couldn't have been nicer about the whole thing. And it turns out it was in March, so we do have to make that correction on the museum website because they have it wrong. Now, this book, The Hidden Girl, has been out for about 6 months, and Lola's gotten several letters, and I asked her to bring a few just so I could read them so you get an idea of the kinds of things that young readers are sending her. And sometimes they draw things, which is really sweet. So they draw some of the things in the book. So I'll just read a couple of these letters. Dear Lola Rein Kaufman, hello, my name is Ashley, and I am in the 6th grade. The reason I am writing you is because my class read your book, and I would like to tell you how amazed I was when we read it. Also, I want to ask you some questions. In addition, I just want to say your book is so good I couldn't put it down. I can't believe how you felt when you were in that dirty barn hole. Also, it was even worse when that family didn't even care for you. How did you survive? I almost cried when I heard what happened. You are so inspirational to me, I could never have done that. You are amazing. That must have been so hard for you to go on alone with no family by your side. Now I think twice about my life and how lucky I am to have good food, clean clothes, showers, friends, a roof over my head, and a family that loves me. Also the things that I don't need, like a TV, iPod, phone, and other things. You have changed my life, and I thank you for that. You also are great because you even wrote a book for younger kids to comprehend so they can listen to your tragic story. Well, I could write so much more, but there wouldn't be enough paper in the world. And then someone actually wrote a poem for Lola, which was very sweet. Brave little Lola, fighting for her life. Brave little Lola, trying to see the light. Brave little Lola, surrounded by people. Brave little Lola, you were so young you barely had a clue. Brave little Lola, you made me glad. You were a little trooper, so very strong. You always moved along. The end. And she wrote, I hope you enjoyed my poem because you are a real hero. Dear Lola, hello, my name is Alexis Ray Lewis, and I'm a 14-year-old girl attending Union 8th Grade Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I have read your book. To be honest, it was the very first book I had ever taken seriously, and I cried, well, started to cry, because that story was very touching. I am sorry you went through such a horrible time. I have been through beatings and a lot of stuff. I would love for us to have contact with each other. Your very appreciating admirer, Alexis. Read one more. Dear Mrs. Lola, I'm a student who has read your book. I felt really sad when you said that everyone that was a long-lost relative didn't want you. Kind of means that your family broke apart. My family is having problems right now, and I'm always sad and depressed. I just want to make things better so we can all get along. I don't want us to split apart ever. Your story touched me, and I really just wanted to cry. If you read this and you have advice for me, because I'm tired of being sad, please write back. I'm very grateful to Lola for sharing her story with me and with the world, and now with all of you. Here she is, Lola Rein Kaufman.
Well, to this day, I still can't believe that I'm speaking in public, because if you would have told me that, I would have never believed that I would stand in front of people and speak. Well, anyway, my remembrance begins with the World War II. And I was born in a town in Poland. Now it's Ukraine, and it's called Chortków. And my memories begin when the Russians were marching into town, and my mother and I are in the street watching the tanks and the soldiers marching in, and then shooting starts. And my mother grabs me, and we're running into the first doorway, and we wait for a few hours till everything quiets down. And I knew intuitively that life will not be the same ever again. And this was in 1939, and for 2 years we were under the Russians. But I didn't realize at that time that we were very lucky, because they marched into part of Poland in 1941, the Germans. So people were we were in 1941 under the Germans, but in 1939 rather, a lot of part of Poland was under the Germans. When the Germans marched into our town in 1941, that's when our trouble really started. The Ukrainians started to harass the Jewish people, and there were bands that marched around, and when they saw a Jewish person, they would gang up on him and beat them up. And that happened to my father in 1941. They beat him up, and since then, he never was the same again. And in 1942, he became very sick and he died. And in 42, they started a ghetto, and we had to move into the ghetto. Luckily, our house was just the beginning of the ghetto, so we did not have to move, but people started to sense that bad times are coming, and everyone started to look for a hiding place. And when the first action came, which we called Akcja in Polish, it's action means actually when the trains were in the station and they started to round up Jewish people and fill up the trains and take them to extermination camps, either to Auschwitz. People from our town, they took to a camp that was called Belzec. Well, the first very big action was in 1942, and my mother found a place. We had, like, in our courtyard, an old barn. Also, it was a place where they kept a lot of old furniture from the people that lived around that courthouse. And the back wall of that barn was made out of wood, and it was plastered with mud and straw. My mother was able to move away the bottom board, and there was a very narrow space between the house that bordered that barn, and the barn itself. It was very narrow. We had to crawl in underneath, and we were only able to stand. You couldn't even turn around. And during the night, you heard a lot of glass breaking, people crying, shooting. It was a very, very frightful noise. I just see my son walked in. Anyway, they started to bang at that wall. The Ukrainian, most of the people that they were rounding up people was the Ukrainian police, and once in a while you saw a German soldier. They started to bang at the wall because they thought perhaps there's something in back of the wall. And I was just on the verge of screaming when they started to bang at that wall. And my mother put a very heavy hand on my mouth. She almost choked me not to scream. And they started to bang, and the dust started to fall on their faces, and they said, "No, there's no one there." So they left. And it was unbelievable how frightening that it was, especially for a child. When I think about it, I still get goosebumps and start to shake sometimes. Anyway, when they finally left, we waited out till it got very quiet. We spent the whole night there, and the following morning, it was very quiet, and we crawled out. After that action, 2 of my uncles were gone, 6 of my cousins were gone, only my mother, my grandmother, and I were left. And just life went on in the ghetto, and it was always hunger, fright, always rumors going around what's going to happen next. In 1943, my mother went to work. She was working for Gestapo, fixing clothes. That's how she was making all the dresses, and she embroidered them for me. She had papers to leave the ghetto. It was a holiday Purim on March 1943. She left the ghetto, and on the way to work, she was stopped by a Gestapo with his dog. He was making his rounds. She, her cousin, and 2 other women, they were stopped. They showed the papers that they were allowed to leave the ghetto, but that didn't help. He took them to the courtyard of the jail, told them to disrobe, and just shot them in cold blood. When we found out that my mother was gone, my grandmother had a big talk with me, and she said to me, first thing she said, "I'll take care of you, don't worry, and don't don't forget that every Purim, when you live through the war, and I remember distinctly, she did not say if you live through the war. When you live through the war, don't forget you have to light candles for your mother. And I lived with my grandmother for just a few weeks. I don't know exactly. I was not aware of the time, whether weeks went by or a month. But it was very shortly after my mother was killed that she, one evening before I went to sleep, she says, "Tonight, you're not going to sleep home. We have to have a big talk. I made arrangements for you to go out of the ghetto. You have to sneak out of the ghetto. You have to walk over to the bridge. The bridge separated the ghetto from the rest of the town. You have to wait there for a Ukrainian woman, and you have to go with her, and you have to be a very good girl and listen what she tells you." Of course, I started to cry. I didn't want to leave her. And she says,